Welcome everyone, my name's Chris, and today I'm going to be telling you why so many people have this difficulty of not being able to see themselves and their problems, but see everyone else's perfectly fine. The first question I want to ask you is, what do you see when you're driving? If you do drive a car, right? You're often, I hope so, looking out the windshield, right? And as you look out the windshield, what do you see? You see either open road or another car. If you see an open road or another car, you're not looking at the car itself, and yet you still know what's going on inside your car. You know where the gear shift is, you know where the brake and the gas is, and if it's a manual, you may know where the clutch is. You may also know where the radio station turner is. I literally can't find the word. The volume, the AC, the aux or the Bluetooth, right? You know where all these things are in your car. But the problem is that you can't particularly see when maybe a bee is in the back of your car, right? You don't see that very quickly. And that's the thing that is attuned to everyone's personal life. You don't often see the little thing that's in the back of your mind that's actually anchoring your capabilities. So, to continue on to this, if you are someone who views the world through other people rather than viewing the world as of where you're standing, you're never going to actually find those deep internal problems that you need to solve. I want to mention a second point here, and that is the spiritual bias of living through yourself. What do I mean by this? When you wake up in the morning and you go to look at what someone else has done, or you go to look at you maybe in the mirror, you will say a lot of positive things, right? Now, you may be saying positive things out of consciously knowing that, so that way you can be better off in a certain area, because maybe you are lacking in that area and you figured that out beforehand, usually a skill. Or you wake up and you're living through the spiritual bias of you. You're living through the feeling of, this is me, and I am currently the best version of people, which is obviously false. However, the mind can trick you very easily if you are not attentive and aware to what it is saying to you, or what it's even feeding to you in terms of actions and information. Those two things basically make it up an entire person, is action and information. Because action and information make perceptions, feelings, and drive you to do the same actions again. So, knowing that now, those 2 points, there is a very interesting question that can be made up of this. That being, why are you still continuing to be in a state where your consciousness is controlled by either other people or other things that you claim you can't control? Because if you take the information aspect of what I just said, and you go to social media, that is information, okay? That information being provided to you is probably horrible information at best. So, you really have to fine-tune what information you actually get. Once you fine-tune the information that you get, you'll be able to filter through what is bad and get to the actual valuable things that you may need. So then you can also prioritize your time, because your income and your relevance and your mental capabilities don't truly have a limit. Those things really don't. Money definitely doesn't have a limit. Capabilities may have a limit if you really have a bad problem that has a limit, like a mental problem. And the character of yourself does not have a limit as well. But what does have a limit is time. You have 24 hours in a day. If you're spending 4 hours, 3 hours, 6 hours a day on social media or on something that doesn't contribute to you, and if you're using social media to contribute to yourself, then good, you're fine. But if you're using social media in a way that does not contribute to yourself, then you're just wasting your time, but that's the only thing that you cannot get returned for. You cannot take the 105 hours back a week or whatever, right? Now, obviously that's a bit much, but you can't take that many hours back in a week and just do it all over again. Despite the feeling that you can, because as every week goes by, you think, oh, well, now it's Monday, this week has reset, that means last week doesn't matter. But the thing is that last week is still last week. If you did, think about it like this. If you deadlifted 500 pounds last week, you would be able to go to the gym and deadlift 500 pounds again. But the problem is, people think that since that week has occurred, that is the only timeline which existence matters. But that's false. Existence matters in the infinite timeline from your birth to your death. There is no limiting scale to that. Now, why do I mention this? I mention this because if you don't know that you can control your attention and you can control your information that you are being received and giving, then in turn, you will be controlled by the information you are getting fed, whatever that information is. And the quality in that case is not determined up to you. The power of information and attention is the most valuable thing in the 21st century. You should know this by now. If you're on social media, you should know this by now. Because go look at your screen time, right? Go pause the video, look at your screen time, and then come back. Give you a couple seconds. Okay, now assuming that you're back, how many hours was it, right? Oh, maybe it was a lot. Oh, it's kind of what I expected. Right. That is 30 hours of a programmer entering things into your brain that will evoke dopamine. That is the only code that they know. Okay? And sure, that's valuable in some cases, but in every single scenario all the time, that's called an addiction. I'm going to go to my third point now, because I think I've elaborated close enough on the spiritual bias of viewing through yourself. That was point number 2. So point number 3 is the Mexican Hollywood filter. You have the spiritual bias of living through yourself, right? That is internal and a little bit external. But the thing that really is external is your eyes. And your eyes see everything through a filter of you. The existence of you, is almost has to be centered or put in a center point, because think about it like this. Imagine a world where you lived, but you didn't believe that you were the center of something, right? You'd be scattered everywhere. You'd look like you were just laid out like a deck of cards on a table. You wouldn't have any real purpose besides being used and eventually thrown out when you're old. And that's what happens in most jobs, right? You get used and you're thrown out when you're old. So in the sense that if you do not understand that you are a center of something in your life or something that you will create, therefore you will be left to be used until you die. That's because you are not showing anybody that you have a real value that should be given to the people. Hence, the filter. So now that we understand that we have to view the world through a filter of we are the center, that is ego, right? But it's a little different from ego. Because ego is you going on the aggressive. The center that I'm mentioning is defensive. It's saying, no, I will not tolerate tyranny. I will not tolerate being used by other people for their gain unless I am voluntarily doing so. The center of self is important to have. Anyways, going back to my point here, the window that I'm mentioning is more like the ego, because you take on this central focus point the ego is then pushed outwards, right? It's like if you implanted a seed and a tree grows out. It's the same exact thing. Except now it's a lens that you view the world through, which is yourself. Therefore, you're going to try to correct problems in the way that you solve problems, so that way you can become the best at that thing and therefore are higher valued in a value hierarchy. Because as one develops a skill that they are really good at, they are going to want to make people try to solve it in the way they solve it. Think about it like this. If you made everyone run exactly the way you did because of exactly the way your body was built, then of course you're always going to win. Because everyone else's body is built exactly not like yours. Right? If my calves are 2.5 inches and someone else's calves are 3.2 inches, if I tell them to run exactly like me, they are carrying an extra 0.7 pounds of muscle on their legs. Or 0.7 inches of unneeded calf muscle on their legs. Right? It's basically like, you can even take this back to like Spartan times, right? Where you learned about Spartan and Athens and how Spartan kicked babies off of mountains when they didn't look good enough. That's a traditional version of what we are doing in modern society with the lens. With a lens that we're viewing other people and other actions through ourselves and telling them to do our things so that way we win. If I tell you to go read a book that I already read, I won. Because I did it like 7 months before you. Maybe 7 years before you. If you're like 8 years old and you're watching this. But the thing is that as you develop these skills and you teach people these skills and you show people these ideas, they then also have a likability towards you and a reputation towards you, which can also fuel that lens. And to put this into perspective a little bit easier, I love this quote someone said. Don't remember who, but it was, when you get money, money doesn't change who you are, it amplifies who you currently are. It amplifies who you currently are. Now that is a powerful thing. Now that is what will fuel that lens, right? So be aware of that. You might be asking, why did I go on so long? And I did go on long, so I apologize. I want you to take the world through that lens. And I want you to understand that the world is, in fact, not yours. Okay? Going off of that, my fourth point is you compare yourself to bad people to make yourself feel good instead of comparing yourself to good people to make you feel bad. Now, why do I say this? Because if you think one step further in both cases, you'll understand something. You'll understand that in the first example, when you're comparing yourself to bad people to make yourself look good, that is enforcing who you are. It's like money. It's like the amplifier, right? The amplifier is that everyone else around you is stupid. So you look very smart, and the ways that you have can be then reinforced and solidified, and you can have more order, right? You can have a more solidified ground because you know that these people just literally cannot reach your level of intelligence. Okay? Then there's a different perspective. There's you going to 5 smart people and making yourself feel bad. Now, what happens when you make yourself feel bad? You ever notice this? What happens when you get angry? What happens when you get feared? What happens when you get lonely? What happens when you get sad? You do an action almost instantly. If you're sad, you cry. If you're angry, you'll shout. If you're fearful, you'll hide under the blanket, right? Immediate action follows these emotions, right? Especially fear. Immediately actions follow. Have you ever wondered what would happen if you made yourself feel bad in a way where you would take immediate action to follow up? become fearful. I am fearful of that. I am fearful of being bad at the thing that I want to get good at public speaking, for me. So what do? I practice. I practice with these videos. I now have a public speaking class I go to. These things will practice public speaking, and therefore I will develop a better skill in that subject, and I will get results based on my skill level. Correct? So now, we understand that you should be comparing yourself to comparing yourself to good people so you feel bad and you take action towards that becoming of the great thing that you are. Finally, after my long rant here, my last point. And number 5 is probably one of the more important points. So I hope that you've stuck around for a while and you actually watched this through. And if you have, thank you. So to bring this whole video home, right? Because I mean, we've been from Hollywood filters of the Hollywood Mexican filter. We've been through, which is point number 3, by the way. The comparing yourself of bad to good. We've been to the spiritual bias, and we've even been to the first point, which I don't even remember at this point, to be honest with you. So I'm gonna keep that in, so I think that's kind of funny. I'm back now with point number 5, right? I was doing this thing. I like this thing. I don't know. If I ever get to the 5th point of video, I'll do this. So, point 5 is, when was the last time you had credibility solving a problem? A genuine problem. Not a math problem, not a science problem, not an inconvenient, creative little a one-off type of problem. When's the last time you solved habitually jumping on rocks, right? Or something that is currently poisoning you that you are aware of and you haven't solved it yet. When is the last time you've done that? Because that is the last thing that your body and your mind will put against you, right? Don't believe in it. Don't believe in it, because when do you want to believe in something that negatively impacts you? No one does. That's just simply a lack of knowledge. Okay? So, as you gain more knowledge in your subject, you'll learn to, I'll learn even, right? For public speaking, I'll learn to move my hands in a different way. I'll learn when to stop talking and when to continue talking, right? And then I'll learn when to take a bit of a higher pitch voice or lower pitch voice. And then I'll learn how to make it quieter or make it louder. And as I do that over time, I can then develop the skill to know, okay, this is how to speak publicly. And then as I speak publicly, I can learn these assortment of things, and I can stop stepping on rocks that hurt myself, right? And whatever that skill may be for you, whatever thing that you may be dealing with, this video about why you can't see yourself as being dumb. Why is it so difficult to see our own faults when we can see everyone else's so easily? The eyes are external. You have to learn how to take the mind and put it internal. Thank you.